Yo, what is good, everybody? It's your boy Golden Falls, Golden What If, or whatever you want to call me. And I'm back. I'm back with the finale of What If Naofumi was the legendary nine-tailed hero. And as always, hit that like, hit that sub, comment down below any suggestions you want to see for Naofumi what ifs, for Deku what ifs, for whatever what ifs you really want to see. Obviously, if I've seen the anime, I can probably do it. It just depends. What else? Also check links in the description. We have a new tier for membership. Yeah, it's a lot more than the original tier where you just get the videos early and stuff like that. I only recommend, and I'm gonna say this right now, I only recommend you actually using that tier, or obviously if you want to show a ton of support, I appreciate that. Like, of course, like I appreciate that totally. But I will say you probably should only use that if you are trying to get into YouTube and you want some tips and stuff like that. That would be like the best way of going about it. And it doesn't even have to be what ifs. It could be something else. Maybe you have other stuff, but because I've been doing YouTube for like about 2 years now, here or there a little bit, but I've done a lot of studying beyond just what ifs and beyond a lot of other things. But it's more like if you want to either support like crazy for me, I mean, it's $24.99 a month. Like, that's pretty crazy in my opinion. But if you want to support me and you have that extra bit to spend, awesome. You get a Discord call with me once a month. So that's kind of where I would say, if you are into YouTube and you want to get started with YouTube, even beyond just what ifs, other stuff as well, that's a good idea. Me and a lot of my friends that are YouTubers or have done YouTube know a decent amount about YouTube just from studying and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm not going to waste much more of your time now. That's all I really wanted to say really quick. I'm going to be advertising that here and there. Yeah, that's about it. I'm not going to waste much more of your time, and let's just get right into the finale of What If Naofumi was the legendary nine-tailed hero. Let's get it. Naofumi begins to stare at who we know as Lark and Therese. Naofumi tells them that he knows exactly who they are and exactly what they want. Naofumi empowers both Raphtalia and Philo, and their powers altogether are extremely high. Lark immediately goes to attack Naofumi to test his strength, but Naofumi doesn't even move an inch and doesn't even basically do anything until Lark slashes through him. When he does, he just poofs into nothing. Naofumi was a shadow clone, or at least that was a shadow clone of him, and Naofumi's behind Lark immediately, slamming this lightning blade or this lightning current that is currently in his hand straight to the chest of Lark. He collapses to the ground and is extremely hurt. Therese tries to go and help and heal him, and Naofumi immediately stops her by grabbing her with basically a giant tailed beast hand. Naofumi tells them that this fight is not a fight they can win, and frankly they are far behind anything that Naofumi could output currently as they speak. Naofumi tells them this and makes it very apparent that they should take their leave right now. Just as he says this though, glass would then appear from the wave, blasting toward Naofumi and also obviously the rest of his party. He would be able to parry it and block it at that moment, and obviously Naofumi would tell Glass the same exact thing, that this is not a place for them to fight, that they are making a very bad mistake. They then learn about everything that's occurring. If Naofumi and them do not die, their world will die. But Naofumi knows that there has to be another way about that. He, for one, cannot, let this world die, because he's grown quite fond over a couple people, and of course he doesn't want to kill them just outright, because, I mean, he doesn't want to see their worlds die as well. They just need to get stronger and be able to protect it. Immediately, Naofumi explains to them, that specifically, if they all just get immensely stronger, then who says that they won't be able to defend the waves for as long as they exist? Of course, this isn't the most well thought out plan. I mean, that's not even really a plan. That's just him saying, hey, get stronger. But at the end of the day, the other three don't really have a choice. Lark, Therese, and Glass are far outclassed in this regard, And frankly, they're going to need to get a lot stronger in general if they want to take on Naofumi, Raphtalia, and also Philo. But frankly, Naofumi alone seems to be way too much for them. Well, with that said though, Naofumi gives them one last chance to head off, that the next time they show up, their fight will have to end, and unfortunately will most likely end in their deaths. Of course, they tell him not to underestimate them, well, obviously, because they need to get stronger themselves, but Naofumi would be seeing them far sooner than he would possibly imagine. Everybody would then see as the wave would eventually go away, petering out, and the sky would entirely clear. Naofumi would speak to the queen and everybody there about what occurred and what he learned. But of course, the other heroes are pretty mad about him not just killing them, but he makes it apparent that the other heroes need to get stronger as well. That's just a flat out problem, that they're not able to take on a boss that weak. Naofumi kind of gets frustrated with them, but his mood would be lifted relatively quickly when the queen would actually gift him something that would shock him. It's actually basically the deed to owning or being the whole leader of Raphtalia's old village. Naofumi would immediately start revamping that said village and just getting everything into basically good standards. That was the goal for Naofumi, especially after learning of this village, and now there could be a place for demi-humans to thrive and basically collectively get stronger and maybe even help out with fights in the future. Because of course he does believe that being a warrior to an extent and someone that can help in the near future will benefit everybody and everything in this world. A lot of time would eventually then pass, Naofumi and his party training and so on and so forth, and obviously getting the village ready. And the one day would come that is so odd. An eerie feeling would run through the entire group, and it seems like there are these bats and creatures headed their way. Luckily, and very quickly, Raphtalia and Philo will handle all of those monsters, slaying them in a matter of minutes. After this wild occurrence, and basically an occurrence that they've really never seen, Naofumi would get a message from the queen to have a meeting with the other three heroes and herself. He would begin listening to what's occurring and what happened, and he would actually learn of exactly where these monsters are coming from. It seems like there's a giant spirit tortoise. Well, he's not so sure exactly what that's all about, but he learns more and more about this spirit tortoise, and the more he listens, the more he begins to get an interesting idea. And Kurama even chimes in and speaks about it. This spirit tortoise must have, well, familiars, vessels, and various other people that are connected to it. And there could be a advantage or disadvantage within that idea, so they definitely should keep that in mind. After some time passes, Naofumi would eventually exit, and he would hear the bickering of Mine begging Motoyasu to basically tell the queen that she wanted her royal status back. Of course, that is not going to happen. Mine is a piece of garbage. So Naofumi would head out with his group and begin scouting out what their next move should be. This then leads to them actually taking some more time to train, level up, and Naofumi to gain more experience using things known as, well, ninjutsu, and basically techniques that would allow him to expand his arsenal even more. Anything that he can possibly learn from scrolls, hidden books, and anything that he's basically learned from Kurama and where he's pointed out, Naofumi has learned of various amounts of techniques. Nonetheless, though, after all of this is said and done, he would get an interesting, well, I wouldn't say interesting, but definitely not a good idea, or, well, basically some really bad information. Naofumi would hear that the other three heroes have been killed. This is obviously not the best thing to hear, but Naofumi would immediately head out with his party to find the location of this so-called spirit tortoise. After some travel and after going by some people, he would eventually find the quote-unquote location, or at least where it was trampling through initially. But Naofumi would then be ambushed by a ton of more monsters. Monsters would begin to swarm Naofumi, and he would immediately hop into his, well, basically tailed beast link form, and Naofumi would begin to obliterate these monsters, absolutely destroying them with his perfect link with Kurama. And don't get me wrong, he's extremely strong at this point. I mean, they've trained over probably around a couple weeks to maybe a month, and also, well, Naofumi already had a perfect link with Kurama before this, so he's extremely strong. On top of his party strength, Naofumi just obliterates these monsters in a blaze of flames and in a matter of seconds. Naofumi would shrug off all of these basically monsters, but then a woman would be revealed. This woman would then tell Naofumi to kill her. Naofumi would be extremely confused, and eventually he would get some information about who this woman exactly is. This woman is a familiar of the spirit tortoise. Naofumi would basically relay this information to the queen, and eventually would lead to them having a meeting with, well, all the nations. They would begin to explain what's going to occur and what's going to happen. Naofumi would watch as arguments would go off more and more, but then Naofumi would lay down the law, telling them that the spirit tortoise is a giant threat, and, well, they need everything in their power to kill it. So Naofumi lays out a plan to basically get it vulnerable enough where he will deliver the final blow straight to the face of the spirit tortoise, or at least that's the goal. Naofumi would lay out this plan, and it would all lead down to the other nations basically detaining or constricting the spirit tortoise for a free shot. Days would pass, and that they would wait for the spirit tortoise to finally make its move once again. When it begins to trample through the valleys and the other places, their plan would go right into execution. They would trap the spirit tortoise with magic, strike it with anything they possibly can to at least stun it, and Naofumi would stare right at the head of the spirit tortoise as he begins to tailed beast transformation with Kurama and charge up a massive electrified, with fire revolving around them, tailed beast bomb. One that he's never made this strong, one that he's never made this big. Naofumi lets it rip. As this tailed beast bomb hurtles toward the spirit tortoise, it connects with the face of the spirit tortoise, digging into the body of it, and even just obliterating the head of the tortoise entirely. Naofumi stares at it as he believes that it's been killed, but Kurama immediately says that that's not the case. He can sense that the spirit tortoise is still alive. Naofumi immediately says that they need to go to plan B, but they need a way for the spirit tortoise to recover entirely, and they need to restructure their plan and get everybody else out of there. Naofumi calls toward everyone, powering them all up so that they can just escape with relative ease, telling them that they need to retreat, that the spirit tortoise is not dead. Naofumi gets everybody to leave so that they can reestablish an ambush in the coming days, but Naofumi says that it's going to rely on basically him getting near the spirit tortoise. And when he means near, he means right next to the spirit tortoise. This will be a little bit more difficult, but Naofumi knows that this might be the only way of going about it, so that's exactly what they're going to do. But he also speaks with Raphtalia about, well, something that she needs to do as well. Of course, after speaking in private about the plan, Raphtalia would be all for it and thinks it's a great idea. Of course, this idea is something very, very optimistic. Couple days would then pass, and their new plan would be reconstructed, and all built on Naofumi getting as close as possible. But once they paralyze the spirit tortoise this time, it seems like it has some long-range tactics. Naofumi would grab Raphtalia and begin sprinting over there, basically using the max amount of power he possibly can. Naofumi would jump toward the spirit tortoise as he basically weaves some hand signs that many obviously don't understand. Many of the other nations are confused at what he's doing, but he then basically pats the spirit tortoise on the head. When he does this though, this odd writing begins to appear on the spirit tortoise, but it doesn't really look like writing. It looks like a giant web of black paint. It begins to cover the front side of the spirit tortoise, and Naofumi grabs Raphtalia and immediately dashes away as well. And just as this occurs, the spirit tortoise begins to get more enraged, heading over toward Naofumi. Naofumi and Kurama expecting this to occur, but nonetheless there is no choice now. He then places his hand on Raphtalia's stomach, as that same symbol on the spirit tortoise would appear on her as well, in turn making it so that the spirit tortoise itself would then be absorbed into Raphtalia. Just as this occurs, the spirit tortoise begins to dissipate and transfer within Raphtalia. Naofumi basically gives her as much strength as he possibly can, with her struggling, but luckily she's been progressed in power a ton, so she can definitely handle the surge of power. Just as this is occurring and just as the mist is dissipating, it seems like multiple people begin falling out of the so-called spirit tortoise. Naofumi, in kind of shock at what's going on, he looks over to see a ton of people. One being the book vassal hero that he doesn't really know about, obviously, but as well as Glass, Lark, and Therese. On top of that, the other three heroes that were so-called dead. Luckily, since the spirit tortoise is now put away, unfortunately, the female that basically showed up giving them some information is obviously gone. Fortunately though, that means the other three heroes are not dead and everything should be okay. Naofumi heads over to the book vassal hero and, well, he sees that he's getting detained, thrown down, and Glass immediately tells him that they have everything from here on handled. Naofumi kind of shrugs at this and says that sounds good, he guesses, but he does basically question what's going on and why they were even, well, decided to be here. They tell Naofumi about the book vassal weapon wielder and his plan, and luckily they're going to be able to take this weapon away from him and make sure that he doesn't do anything like this ever again. Naofumi questions what the plan was, and it was to basically use the spirit tortoise to destroy and kill the four heroes here and also destroy the world. Naofumi then is completely shocked but glad that it went the way it did. And immediately as these things are being said though, Raphtalia begins to say that she has a weird feeling. Naofumi asks if she's okay, and she says, yeah, not like that. It's not that her power or the power is leaking out or anything, but she senses something through the powers that the book vassal weapon wielder was actually using at one point. And he actually was in complete idea that he was going to send Naofumi and his party, if he was given the chance, to this weird place of limbo. But Raphtalia begins to say that this place actually contains somebody. Naofumi is confused and asks about anybody they would know, or Glass, Lark, and Therese would know anybody would be put in some sort of limbo or some labyrinth or of some sorts that is basically unescapable. Immediately when they hear this, they're shocked to what they're saying. They have someone that is just like that, someone put away and someone not able to basically go home. Raphtalia is shocked to hear this, but then teleports this same person using the power of the spirit tortoise. In doing this, sending her back to her original world. Whoever the woman is, we already know who it is, back to the world of where Glass comes from. Glass, Lark, and Therese are in complete shock and immediately leave as quick as they possibly can, eventually finding out that that is exactly true. The one that was locked away for all this time is now back in her original world. They personally, Naofumi, Raphtalia, they don't know exactly what occurred, but nonetheless, they'll take what they can get, they guess, but nonetheless, at least they were able to support and help them out a lot. And Raphtalia was given even more power than they can possibly imagine. With the power duo of Raphtalia, Naofumi, Philo, obviously being the eventual Filial Queen, it looks like their party is going to be powerful enough to protect this world. But whoever knows what is to come? Who knows what is over the horizon? Well, that's a story for a whole other day, and a story for probably when season 3 comes out. But nonetheless, I hope y'all enjoyed. If you did, as always, leave a like, leave a sub, leave a comment down below, all that good stuff. And I hope all of y'all have an amazing day. Later.